to the cloud. Da-da-da-da-da, boom, coming to you almost live with Jeffrey Kass, who is a now two-time author and a lawyer, a father of two, lives in Colorado, and father of three. He had another baby a long time ago. I usually mess something up there just to keep, I'm only going off memory as well. So, the goal is to have fun. I want you to correct all of my errors in this entire conversation. And I would love to just extract as much of your wisdom and passion, and also your this professional, what I look at as now your lineage, that you're covering race, diversity, and unconscious bias, which it sounds like a really huge passion point for you. And as we know, human rights are like the topic right now, you know that, in COVID. So let's not overshadow it with COVID, but yeah, let's jump right into it. So tell us about the latest project.
So my latest project, when COVID hit back in, March-ish, April, well, the first thing I did was went and got an antibodies test, because I was in San Francisco in January and got really, really sick right after I got back. And it came back and said, you're borderline. And I'm like, that is not a diagnosis that I want, but I have borderline antibodies. So anyway, I started I really wasn't intending to write a book yet, but I started journaling through the craziness that was taking place. So the first thing you know, we're running out of toilet paper. And I'm like, but COVID doesn't cause incessant pooping. What is going on here? And then George, I'm writing through this, and I'm writing fun stories that are half serious, half humorous. I've been doing stand-up comedy since I was 18, kind of on an amateur level. So I always throw comedy in because we get too serious in this world. And then George Floyd hit, which is not really that funny. And it's not funny at all. And, we've kind of been dealing with race issues for a long time in this country, but things were kind of coming to a head. And because we're all not going to concerts anymore, and we're not going to our sporting events, and I'm missing my Denver Nuggets, and, can't go to Buckeye games this year, and all the things that, I think the joke now is I finished Netflix. Now what? We're stuck, and we have to pay attention. We're not getting to do as many things in life. And so it kind of comes to a head. And I realize we have two pandemics that we're dealing with. We're dealing with COVID, which has obviously affected many people in a different way, but it's affected most of us pretty significantly, if not as a business owner, or as somebody who lost their job, or as somebody who lost a grandparent, or my dear friend's mother-in-law was in a coma for 3 months. I mean, it's affected a lot of families. And then, there's a large segment of this world, of our country in particular, that's suffering at the hands of racism. And it's easy to say, oh, look at all those MAGA people, or look at all these people, the white supremacists out there with their, Confederate flags, or whatever it is that might offend somebody. But the truth of it is, most of us are not doing that. Most of us are not waving flags that some people find offensive. Most of us are not spewing out hateful remarks. And yet these problems seem to grow. And so I started kind of writing about these two pandemics, again, adding humor in, and I journaled through the race and COVID pandemics together, ultimately culminating in a book called the Rhona Diaries, One World, Two Pandemics. And it covers everything from toilet paper to George Floyd.
Wow. Love it. Now, how much do you think that you maybe have an unconscious bias around, because your background is in law and you litigate, right? You're a trial lawyer?
Yeah, I go to court over business disputes or intellectual property disputes. And the joke that I once put on a dating profile is, what do you do for a living? And I put, I make grown men cry. Somebody got really offended.
Yeah, there's always someone ready to be offended on dating.
No.
So on the online dating. So no, I love it. But I'm curious because I feel like you have an edge, and it's probably a bias too, where you might see more of an argument. You might be able to sort of defragment an argument in a way that's unique because you've studied litigation and like how to break down a complex concept and turn it into something that the jury can understand.
Yeah, no, it's listen, we all suffer from unconscious biases, some of which we're not even aware of yet. I'm certain that I am no exception to that rule. But I think being a lawyer for the last 25 years has helped me and I work on very complex matters, so you really have to dissect them. But I'm able, at least, I guess it doesn't matter whether it's an article written by somebody on the right or the left or in the middle or extreme. I'm pretty quickly able to read all the muckety muck that's coming out nonstop on our feeds and our news, Fox, everything from One News Network or whatever it's called, One American Network, to MSNBC, to whatever it is. I can look at an article and pretty quickly tell you there are some major, something just happened to my thing. Hold on 1 second.
Mm-hmm. Standing by. Let's pull up Jeffrey's. Now, do you prefer Jeffrey or Jeff?
Jeffrey, and I just lost my screen.
Odd. I can see you still, which means the recording can as well. So I'm going to send everyone who's with us, the viewers, or the listeners, if you're just listening to this podcast, thank you for tuning in. You are very important in this conversation. I wish you could comment and ask Jeffrey questions. But yeah, here is, you did just go away. Oh, shucks. Okay. Hold on. Maybe he's going to tune back in. Hold on. But I wanted to send you guys, if you're all, or you folks, can you see his Instagram? Jeffrey Kass 01 is his account. You can head over there, and he brings up really thoughtful conversations around race, corona. And also it looks like he made some yummy lamb chops recently, which now I'm salivating. Okay, here he comes. He's coming back in. Okay, last time it took him a few minutes, so it might take him a few minutes this time.
Okay.
Oh, good. Yay.
So what I was really getting is I'm able to really look at an article or a news piece or whatever it is, a letter from a lawyer, and tell pretty quickly, is this just like, is there really, like when somebody posted something, I found this humorous, studies show that COVID causes ED in men. And I joked, I'm like, yeah, but aren't they all 80 anyway? I pulled up the article because I was kind of curious. Are we really investing, while people are dying and dropping like flies, are we really investing in ED studies right now related to COVID? And I was like, it just didn't, like, those are the kind of things immediately don't make sense. And so I pull up the article, and literally the first 2 sentences in, it says, while there have been no studies yet. I'm like, what? Somebody just posted there have been studies that show. And then the article itself, it talks about there are no studies that show yet. However, we think it could be a problem. And so we have a tendency to like read headlines, or, if somebody recently said, have you watched videos of the trials of all the election fraud? Then you would know for sure that there was election fraud. And I said, well, no, they don't have videos of the trials. And like, yes, they do. I'm like, well, no, I'm a lawyer. They actually don't video those. And they go, well, here's the link. So I'm like, wow, this would be amazing. I'm the first person. I don't care what point of view it's coming from. If there's evidence, there's evidence. That's how I am in life. And so, of course, I pull it up, and it was like somebody setting up a conference in Arizona, of all people that already believe it's election fraud, to bring in people to say what they want to say. It wasn't a trial. And again, if it would have been a trial, I would have been the first person to say, wow, let me hear the evidence. Like, were the judges wrong? You know, were 41 judges wrong? So anyway, I do have this ability, I think, very quickly to get to the bottom of whether there's really meat there, or are people just like spreading nonsense.
Right. And what would you say about this whole, like, the fake news? What advice would you give people who are kind of trying to suss through it all?
We're in a really difficult time now because, on the one hand, the bedrock of our country is free speech. You technically are allowed to go onto a sidewalk right now and say at the top of your lungs, the Holocaust did not happen. Now, we all know that's fake news. You have to be like a really hateful person. And even a person that says that probably knows it's false and is just spreading hate. But it is a bedrock principle of our country that you have a right to do that. I mean, the only thing you don't have a right to do is threaten somebody's life or yell fire in a crowded theater, something that could cause, some immediate harm. But you're allowed to say nonsense. You're allowed to promote. Now, the question becomes, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and George Washington did not have Facebook or Twitter. And so now the question becomes, are these private companies that are acting like public venues, do they have to allow every single piece of news, fake or not, to be broadcast there? And it's who gets to decide what's fake?
I know, it's getting pretty complex.
We're in a no-win situation now in terms of balancing that. Okay, it's so out of control now that you literally can say anything. It doesn't matter. Like, in other words, you could literally imagine millions of people who now will refuse to take the vaccine, not based because they actually read some really deep articles and have studied it, or, have talked to people who, have some things to say about autism and vaccines. Again, I'm not an expert on that, but they just, because they read a Facebook post, and we're going to now make medical decisions. I love when people post on Facebook, oh, I fell down the steps and my elbow won't move. What should I do? I'm like, not post it on Facebook. How about call your doctor? Like, we've become like constitutional law experts now. We're vaccination experts. We're experts on climate change, just like we're experts on everything. Like, my buddy who got through high school with a C is now an expert on vaccinations. And again, my buddy's a good person. I don't care what grades he got, but he's not a virologist. He's not somebody who, and so there is a danger. I don't really have a good answer, because we do need to maintain a high level of free speech in this country. And just because somebody says something you don't like, I don't think we should be putting it down. On the other hand, somebody crazy in the middle of nowhere in the woods in Idaho and somebody crazy in North Carolina used to just be crazy by themselves. Now they can form groups and spread everything. So I think we do need to someday have like really great minds on all of these issues from different angles, kind of tackle these things, and what would be a good way to approach it. No quick
Yeah, I'm sorry to jump in. I just feel like it would be interesting too if we could ever have something like that happen. I think science should be the way that we look at it, but there's still going to be arguments because perspectives are going to be unique. But this divide and how quickly you can outright, and this person might not be in Idaho or Ohio or something. They might just be right down the street and you've known them for 25 years and people are literally like, oh, you posted that? Goodbye. And all of these relationships are getting severed. And I think that it goes back to the diversity and race thing as well. It's like, as soon as you have this feeling that someone, is on the other side than you are, what's happening is a lot of these relationships are just being destroyed, just in one thought. They're like done. And I feel that there's a place that of understanding. And I think that's what you were alluding to initially, where here we are, we're on Facebook and Twitter and everything, and you can just say what you want. But like, it's twofold, right? I think one is you should be able to speak your mind. We are in America. You should be educated if you're out there speaking, but hopefully the education system can start to improve, because that's really what's being exposed. I think all of it, even if there was a guy saying, some ignoramus saying that there was no Holocaust, it's more that there's ignorance than it is that there's a hateful heart, I think, in America. That's how I like to look at it. And I don't want to hate anyone because they think differently or even believe differently than I do. But I know that that's not a popular opinion. A lot of people are like, no, we all should hate that person. And I refuse to do that to people. I just don't think that's just not going to be who I am. But what does that mean for other people? I just don't see that happening.
So, I mean, there's something about social media that you would say that you would not say in person to somebody. Mm-hmm. And I do think, like, even when I'll get hateful comments on some of my, I write for 3 publications online, the End Racial Distancing Journal, and Injustice, and The Shadow, which are on Medium. And I'll get really hateful comments from time to time. And again, if it's downright intentionally hateful, I just ignore the comment altogether, because I don't think for those fringe elements in society that are truly intentionally hateful, it's not where we're going to make improvements. Right. I think where we make improvements, when we have people, like 3 of my largest legal clients are all Trump supporters. And they're also dear friends of mine. And they're also wonderful people. I am not a Trump supporter. I find him reprehensible. I think he's a bigot and a racist, and I could go down the list. Right. It would be easy for me to say, hey guys, I know I've known you for years, and we tell each other we love each other, and these men are awesome people, and I know your families and kids, but I'm no longer going to speak to you anymore. I don't operate that way. I mean, there's certain people I don't engage with because there's nothing productive, but I think we have to get to a place where we are trying to understand why a person feels the way they do. And unless a person is consciously, and I use that word very intentionally, unless a person is consciously motivated by hate. In other words, I like Donald Trump because he's a racist. I would delete somebody from my life if that was the reason they like Donald Trump. I don't want racists in my life. But if the reason isn't that, and they're not consciously hating somebody, and they're not consciously accepting that he's a racist, then to me, we can have conversations that are a little bit more respectful. I think, I work a lot in diversity. I think one of the big mistakes of the diversity world is, when you hear the word diversity, what do you think? You think Black, Hispanic, female, Asian, whatever. You wouldn't think white. But
I think of it a little bit differently. I've done a little.
But most people would think diversity means some group. And the truth is, diversity means all of us. Yeah. And we left out of the conversation, yes, there's white privilege in this country. Like, people get stopped by police who are white don't suffer the same things, even if they're at the same socioeconomic level than Black people do. But somebody who's living paycheck to paycheck, who had their electricity shut off and maybe lost their job, who happens to be white, hears that they're privileged, it's really difficult for them to swallow that concept. And I think rather than say, oh my God, what are you, a dumbass? Or I think just try to understand where they're coming from. And wait a minute, guys, you've been talking about all these groups that have problems. I have problems. You forgot to talk about me. And now we've got a lot of angry people. And I think we just have to try to okay, where is that person coming from? Mm-hmm. Why do they feel that way? And then possibly approach things not, you're wrong, but hey, have you considered how this particular thing impacts this? And just ask people to consider things rather than, I don't know, talk down to each other, I think.
Oh, yeah. People just shut right down. We know that. You just shut right down when you're told that you're not doing things right or you don't see what we see and stuff. Yeah. And I think that diversity includes different classes of people. So if poverty is an issue, then that person, that's part of everybody should have a seat at the table, you know. I don't know. I have my own opinions. Like I have a really strong Boston accent and I know that's affected the tables I'm allowed to sit at, right? People, it's like a total class thing. And I think that being, I'm white, I'm Italian, but like I grew up not thinking I never felt like I was white growing up, but I am now and I own that, of course. But yeah, there's different ways to approach it. So I love what you're saying. So now you're teaching diversity. Are you doing that in companies or are you approaching that from the legal end? And then I have a follow-up question just about.
No, my legal end is just making grown men cry. It's completely just. I literally get paid to go into organizations. They're not all companies. I'm going to be, for example, going into the Colorado Community College system and doing diversity training there. But again, my method is wildly different. I do not go in and say, you need to hire more people of color, or my method is not, here's how to retain people. There's plenty of great people that already do that, that have been failing for years. So I try to go in with a method I call the end racial distancing method. And again, first of all, teaching people to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I go through lots of scenarios that people encounter and how somebody different might encounter that situation differently. So that's number one, because we have to attack like unconscious bias. Oh, I didn't realize you do that. But then we really have a problem in this country. We've integrated our workforces. If you go to the floor of a Ford auto plant, there's Black and white and Latino, it's integrated. If you go to, obviously it could be more integrated, but if you go to most companies, there are people of color, there are women, there's a level of integration. Here's where we have not integrated. In fact, we remain almost 100% segregated. And
at the top.
I'll tell you,
boards and at the top in leadership.
No, but even more than that, something that really is the underpinning of our problems. I was on a panel with Dr. Cornell West in Denver a couple years ago to 100 mostly white male CEOs who were each worth at least 10 million or more apiece. And at the end, one of the guys asked me, or he asked the panel, but I answered the question. He said, what can I do to teach my kids to be less racist than our generation? I said, well, first of all, we don't want to be less racist because that would still make us racist. We just want to not be racist. But I said that half jokingly. But I said, here's the thing. You can't tell people, don't be racist. Don't be racist. It's like telling your kids, be honest, be honest, be honest. And then you go to AMC movie theaters when they open back up. And then your 11-year-old or 12-year-old daughter's with you, but it's 50 cents more if she's 11. So you lie to the counter girl who's taking your tickets and you tell them, oh no, she's 11, right in front of your daughter. You just taught your daughter, erased all of the be honest. It's okay to lie even for 50 cents. And so when you say don't be racist to your kids and don't be racist, but then all of your dinners at your household are all white people all the time, that you never have somebody of color or a Muslim or somebody different than you over to your table for dinner, you are inherently teaching your kids, oh, don't be racist, but our house is going to always be white. Right. And I think we need to be intentional at inviting people into our after 5 o'clock life. That's what's not integrated in this country, our after 5 o'clock lives. And I've got news for everybody. The media, which teaches us all that Black people are really dangerous, Black men are dangerous, it's actually the opposite. They're some of the most loving, warm, the culture that you experience. Like when I go to my friend Jeff's house, he's a great guy. He's a white guy. I go to his house, he goes, good to see you. Hey, what's up? When I go over my friend Ryan's house, who's a Black guy, oh my God, I love you. It's so good to see you. There's a warmth in that culture that we're missing out on. So don't be afraid. It's actually, there's a lot that we can learn from each other.
I love it. I love the specificity of the example. Now tell us, like, what would you say to someone who is maybe leading a team and also feels like their social network is pretty static, and especially with COVID, how to approach, because I love what you're saying about after hours. That is so cool. But I also see it, obviously, there's the bias at work where we're still seeing people leaning toward the sameness. Like, oh, you look like me, you look like my clan. And there's just this natural tendency to hire someone like yourself.
Well, I think post-COVID, we've got to do that after 5, because once we start doing that on a regular basis, the other stuff will more naturally take place at work, because you become intimate and close with these folks that you only knew from 9 to 5.
Right.
But on a more immediate level, I think it's really about, there's an intellectual component to this. It is just simply common sense and a fact that the more people who are different that are at the table, geographically different, socioeconomically different, racially different, gender different, they will come at every type of problem, scientific, social, political, legal, they will come at it from a different angle. Mm-hmm. And I have found in my own law practice, I get the best solutions when I have different people that are not the same as me at my strategy sessions. But I do think we need to be very intentional and mindful about letting people who are different than us, whoever that is, that's a wide net, speak and to be heard. Like if I hear at another meeting, a woman say something that's brilliant, and then they go on to the next thing and a guy says something very similar and they go, that is a great idea. I'm like, hold on a second. She just said the same thing. Mm-hmm. I see that happen all the time. We've got to
still do.
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, I mean,
So what do you do? How do you, because I know there's a lot of men that will be listening to this podcast who are interested or consider themselves allies, or they want to be allies. How would you handle that? And what would you suggest to guys that are starting to they're like, something's wrong with this, or even they're the culprit that have done that, but they want to become aware of that type of
I mean,
behavior.
I really think it depends on where you are in your career path. I mean, early on in my career, I remember hearing the most atrocious racist stuff coming out of lawyers' mouths. And I was a second-year lawyer. And here I hear a former United States senator who's a lawyer working at my law firm, who was a Democrat, a self-described liberal, saying that the best way to help solve the problems in St. Louis is clear out all the Black people. Now, as a first or second year lawyer, whenever it was, I had no power at all. And the last thing I wanted to do was lose my job. I didn't come from my family has no money. Like I lose my job, I'm screwed. So in some instances, you do have to, you're really not in a place to make the change. But as you move up the ladder, I think not only can you make the change, you should take it upon yourself to consciously obligate yourself to make the change. So now, because I'm in a position of power, I'm a partner at my law firm, I have a lot of clients, I just will tackle those things head on. I mean, in a professional way, I don't like scream and shout and how dare you? I might say in that situation that I just gave you, well, let's go back to Cindy for a second, because she actually was the person who originated that idea. And I'd love to hear her expound upon it. That's one way to not put somebody down. And then after that occurs, I think it's important to address, again, not in a shape up or ship out kind of way, but hey, you probably didn't mean anything by it, but it's important that we're all listening to everybody's opinions, because your opinion actually was already said at that meeting, except it was by so-and-so, and try to be aware about that. And if you agree with that opinion, then maybe the better thing would have been to say, You know what? Cindy's onto something.
And would you do that? Would you do that privately, or would you do that during the
I would
meeting?
do that privately. I would not embarrass somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, recently I had a young Asian lawyer come to me and say that somebody jokingly said to him, "I know how you got this job." I mean, first of all, the guy's a brilliant young law student. He's an intern. He's going to make a great lawyer someday.
So the assumption is that because he's a minority?
Exactly. And that still happens all the time. And it wasn't by, actually, it's a female who said it. It wasn't by somebody who consciously hates Asians, might have thought they were being funny, but is not tuned into how deeply offensive that is and how that can really get into the psyche of self-worth of a human being. And so, that was dealt with in a very private manner. And again, not in an accusatory way, but just in an educational way. And then I think companies really need to follow up with, how do we start attacking unconscious bias? And we're going to have to do more than just working on strategy meetings together. We're going to have to get to know each other. So we actually you don't understand. Like I'm Jewish and I have a ton of Arab friends. In fact, I'm going to Saudi Arabia in February as like a Jewish guy.
Nice.
Unheard of.
That's so cool.
But how did I achieve that? How do I achieve those friendships when we might have some political disagreements? It didn't start with politics. We started with coffee. We started with dinner. We started eating, Middle Eastern food together and enjoying laughs and joking around. I mean, one of the guys' dads has two wives. I'm like, what? How is this fair? You can't hoard women. I'm still looking for next wife. We have great sense of humor that we're able to share with each other. And then when politics hits, it's like friends talking about it.
Yeah.
Instead of, oh, you damn Jew or you damn Arab, it's like, oh, no, it's buddies who have had dinner 10 times together who are talking about it. And it's very respectful.
There's respect. And yeah, there's sort of groundwork that's been laid. I love that, thinking about in a corporate setting too. Like, how do you design community, like getting to know each other through difference? Because I just recently was talking to somebody who there was something was misunderstood, it sounds like, and it was punitive. The person was punished and let go of right away without a conversation. There was no communication at all. So now this person walks away completely traumatized versus just educate and have a conversation. Sometimes I'm not saying that we shouldn't address things properly, but it's the same thing in the media. It's like me versus you. It's this like hyper attack, like you're wrong, I'm right, versus what you're saying is like, diversity is everywhere, and diversity of thinking can come from any angle and any color, shape, but why not just get to know each other? I love it. So we have just a few more minutes. I wanted to ask you, because it feels as though now that you've had, you feel really grounded in your success. There's a confidence that is very clear. Now you're a partner. That's amazing. What would you say to folks that are looking to find their passion? Because you seem to have really hit the nail on the head with this last book, and it's added a richness to your life that I don't know if it necessarily would have to come after success and confidence that you're having, but you could speak to that if you want to, or just if you could share how you would suggest to find that well of passion.
I think, kids today are doing a better job of, my parents basically told me, would you like to be a doctor or a lawyer? I'm like, good thing I like being a lawyer, but I think kids are given more leeway now to take a year off before college, or, I think the younger folks are pursuing, but listen, most of us don't come from trust funds and lots of money, and we don't have the ability to paint all day and still pay rent and still, drive a car. So I don't think your job, your vocation has to be your passion. I think you have to like your job. I think you have to enjoy what you do. But one of my first choices of being for career was to be an inner city high school teacher. I'm going to save the world. And I was like, and I'll make $30,000 a year and struggle like my parents did. So I was like, I kind of decided early on, can't I make a good living doing something I still like, and then use that success to pursue whatever other passions I want in the rest of the world, whether it's on civic boards or writing, or if you're a musician, I know lawyers that are in bands. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
So I think it's about, yes, find a job you like, but unless you're a doctor or a nurse or somebody who's actually the teacher, somebody's actually saving the world, but your passion is not selling software, but you love selling software. You have a great artificial intelligence software you're doing for marketing or whatever it is. You like selling it. Okay, great. Keep your job, make good money. And then in your rest of your world, follow whatever deeper passions you have and use those resources to pursue them.
I love it. So great to have you on. So I'd love for you to share where folks can go to get the latest book. And even you mentioned a talk that you gave. If there's any other things that you'd like to mention now, and then I can follow up and put that in the comments as well.
Yeah. So I have two books, but the most recent book is the Rhona Diaries. It's available on Amazon if you're not in Denver. Yeah, go on Amazon. It's available in paperback or hardback. My previous book, Oreos and a Pack of Marlboro Lights, is also on Amazon. And then if you just want to read various essays, you can go on to medium.com, which is a writer's platform, and my works are featured there in multiple publications. Jeffrey Kass, Kass, and again, the End Racial Distancing Journal, The Shadow, and a publication called An Injustice. And then I can also be reached through my website, jeffreykassglobal.com.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much. All of us at the Boston Men's Group, thank you so much for joining us. And it's wonderful to catch up and to see you.
Likewise.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Bye.